Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Totally Baseless. This is BallNine's new podcast that goes in between the lines, outside the lines, and everywhere in between. Welcome to our first episode. I'm Chris Vitale. I'll be your host on this weird, wild ride. And our first guest today, I'm happy to introduce, played 12 years in Major League Baseball, a lefty reliever, played for 6 teams, and is only one of 43 players ever born in Germany. Will Ohman's with us. How's it going, Will?
It's great, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you get the dubious honor of being our first guest here. So all the kinks and all the weirdness.
One. Absolutely.
Numero uno. So, I wanted to get into a little bit about free agency. I see a lot of complaints that Major League Baseball's free agency period is so boring and does not compare to the NBA or the NFL, obviously, or even the NHL. So out of the 4 major sports, the only complaints I see about the free agency period being boring is Major League Baseball. And this year is kind of no exception, aside from, obviously the Dodgers and what they've done. But
fairly exciting.
Yeah, a little bit, fairly. They spent a couple dollars. But do you see that as well? Do you see that Major League? I mean, do you think that there's anything Major League Baseball can do to kind of make it a little more exciting for the fans?
I don't know how you make free agency exciting, but it's definitely not the bidding war that it was in, say, the early to mid 2000s. And I think that's where the reaction is. All this stuff, it's just the temperature in the room, and how it used to be. What you and I and our generation probably remember is just a frantic run to the cash machine at this a week after the World Series ended. And it was just owners coming out and GMs coming out going, I got to have him. I got to have him. I got to have him. We're all putting it in place. It was also a much more static organizational thought process at that time, where you had your player development crew, your minor league development staff more set. You had organizational thought that was it was different brands. Different teams played different brands of baseball, and they were looking for very specific ideas and very specific players. So whoever was number one off the board at a given position, 3, 4, 5 different teams wanted that guy, and you'd see a bidding war. And as things have transitioned into a more analytically driven, computer-based model, where you look at the Moneyball stats and you go, well, these players are actually pretty similar, so I don't need to come in with a big fat checkbook and get caught up in the rat race, and now it's a Black Friday sale and I'm paying more than I would, and I'm wasting 4 hours in line at Walmart. They go, okay, well, we'll just pump the brakes here, and we'll take any one of these 5 guys because it's going to fit the profile of what we want.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, do you think that, like you said, I mean, now that there's more of an analytic-based evaluation process, I mean, does that make kind of a homogenization of, just of players across the board? Or are they just kind of like plug and play?
Well, I think it leads to more parity, in a sense, where a team who doesn't have as deep a coffers can come in feeling relatively confident that they can achieve what they want to. But the data-driven model really is it's a for-profit model. The team has to make money. So if you know coming into it that you're a team fighting for 3rd place in your division, and if you shoot the moon and things go really well for you, and you find yourself shockingly in wild card contention, well, then you open up the bank midway through the season. You don't do it ahead of time. Yeah. And it's all done on a business model as opposed to a win model. In my opinion, that's just how I read it from the outside.
That brings me to, it's funny, if you said, you're fighting for 3rd place in your division, that automatically brings both the NL and the AL Central to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like there are a lot of third place teams in those divisions. But I want to bring up. I'm looking right now, and I want to bring up the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds kind of went out and did a couple things here. They brought in Jamer Candelario, Frankie Matas, Nick Martinez, and Hunter Renfroe already. Um, so they're spending some money. Is that if we want to look at these contracts, Candelario's getting 15 million a year. Nick Martinez 13 million a year. Frankie Montas got 16 million. So Cincinnati kind of has a notorious reputation. I don't want to call them cheap because I don't think having a payroll of anything in the tens or hundreds of millions is cheap. But do you think we're seeing a little bit of overpayment now? Considering, I mean, or is this just the market? Is this just what it is?
I think that I think that you're dealing with price inflation. Gallon of milk costs $5 now. Gallon of gas. This week is $5 depending upon what city you're in.
Yeah.
And you travel 2 states over, and it's worth 3. It is a sliding scale. I don't think it's. I hate to overuse the word, but I just don't think the static mindset of this is the value now paints the total picture. I think it's far more of a mosaic where you have to, doing calculus to figure out what things are and what things are worth. And like it goes back to the free agency blitz that we were all used to, where you'd see one guy get an outrageous contract and a team, collective, all the talking heads go, oh my gosh, they overpaid for this guy. Well, it was because there was a bidding war. Mm-hmm. But now we look at it and we go, well, oh my gosh, in my lifetime, I've seen me, a player of my value, what I do. And I go, at my best, at my absolute best, was I really worth this now adjusted to inflation? I go, no way. Or yes way. I wish I would have been playing now.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all this weird. It's weird calculus in the back room, where you look at the draft slots and what teams are paying there, versus what the major league minimum is on that scale and how that's progressing, and then the biggest division that'll tell you where stuff is on contracts is what's the median, like, blue collar replacement player type salary to what the major league minimum is, and what's that gap. That gives you a little bit of a barometer, because when you start focusing on the high dollar guys like the Shohei Otanis, it puts everything out of proportion.
Yeah.
And it throws the major league average salary off, all of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, to bring up the Cincinnati Reds and a player that I forgot. Now you mentioned kind of your average everyday replacement player. They signed Emilio Pagan as well for $8 million a year. Isaiah kind of got 7.5 per year for 2 years. So I mean, that's kind of where I guess that's where the baseline is set at this point. I mean, these guys aren't superstars; they're solid players, and I mean, I wouldn't mind them on my team. They're good role players, but I mean, even 4 years ago, if you told me Emilio Pagan was going to get 8 million, I might have thought you were a little nuts. But
well, I mean, looking at his stats right now, I mean, he's a seasoned veteran.
Yeah, solid player.
And but he's got some pretty ridiculous peripherals when you look at just his hits per inning pitched and then his walk rate.
Yeah.
When a guy has a career, I mean, it's pretty bananas right there. His career whip is 1.070.
Okay, that's a little crazy.
That means that's bananas, because 1.3 used to be the barometer for whether a guy is good.
Yeah.
If you're 1.3 or below, you're doing well. You're doing a good job. That means approximately 1 hit per inning and 1 walk every 3 innings. It's easy math. And people have gone away actually from looking at whip It was one of the first newfangled introduced stats,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it's a really good look from a 30,000 foot level at, is this guy doing a good job of limiting damage? Now it gets so focused on K rate and walk rate that you don't understand, because is it based on balls per nine, or is it the percentage rate?
Yeah.
And that gets you further and further away, and then you end up in the Wizard of Oz and pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That is, I mean, that's a good perspective, and I honestly did not know that his whip was that low. And it's funny you mentioned that. I just took a look. You know, your career whip was 1.3. So I don't know if you just made that up, but I'm kidding.
No, I actually, it was taught to me a long time ago. It's still the barometer that I use,
Yeah.
because I can look at a guy's, I can go old head to the extreme and look at his ERA or his win loss record. Okay, but let me filter that through this and go, just a simple litmus test. If the ERA is just way off from what the whip is, something weird occurred. Either he had horrible luck behind him, or he had like 5 really bad games. And I was a big stat guy, even when I was playing, like just for setting goals, for looking at what I wanted to do in the macro perspective, and then just whittling it down to, okay, what can I control today? And one of the things that I remember specifically is I had a really strong 2006 campaign. It was my first real full year in the big leagues, and my ERA was north of 4, and it was still during that time that people were like, oh, okay, ERA matters. And then you do the math on it, and you actually look at my game log, and I gave up 13 of the runs that I gave up on the season in 3 games.
Yeah. Wow.
And I pitched in 78 that year.
Oh, wow. So just one little rough stretch. And I guess it's true. I mean, if you're coming in for one inning at a time and you have a couple bad games,
Uh-huh.
then that's going to skew
Right.
north in a hurry.
It skews everything. So there I would have really benefited from K rate, walk rate, all
Of
that
course.
stuff.
Of course.
So I mean, and a good agent, a good GM are both going to do math again in the back rooms and go, oh, well, he's not worth as much because of this, or he's worth more because of this. That's just my perspective, that you treat each thing individually, but you have a little bit of a litmus test for, okay, how do I understand this number? Because this number, just like if I'm teaching a young pitcher how to throw pitches in sequence, a singular pitch is not a standalone event.
Hmm.
There's a historical perspective to it, and what I do next should be in relation to what I just did. So all of these things come together, and that, not to sound overly flowery, but it's a mosaic where you have to really paint the picture.
Apt description, I must say. Um, now,
Well, those of us who hail from Germany,
well,
we
this is
understand
true.
that technical prowess is a real must.
All for 43. I know. I have to say I was, I mean, I kind of knew about Max Kepler, and I knew about Ron Gardenhire. I did not know Edwin Jackson was from Germany.
Fun fact, as was Arthur Rhodes. He was born on a military base as well.
Huh.
So for those of you doing Immaculate Grid, Arthur Rhodes and Edwin Jackson are the cheat codes.
Oh yeah.
But I actually played with Edwin in Chicago with the White Sox, and I actually played with Max Kepler for Team Germany prior to
Oh
him
wow.
ever coming over to the States.
Really? That's interesting.
Yep, 2016, 2013, I believe it was. No, 2012, 2012 in the WBC qualifier.
Well, he's German.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was like, he's the first real example of a German-born bred
Yeah.
major league player.
Yeah.
The rest of us were just guys who, were born on army bases.
That is good for the Immaculate Grid if that ever shows up. So if they happen to be listening, throw that in there. I want a good, kind of cheat code for that.
There you go.
You know, yeah. Hey, man, why not? But okay, so getting back to free agency, you had mentioned, we talked about a little lull this year, but you said
Hmm.
pre 2008, which was a free agency you got caught up in. That's kind of when that
Yep.
slowed down. The bidding wars, the frenzies. It's so. I mean, can you talk about what it's like to be a player going through that? What your thought process is, like just not knowing where you're going? Because I've never actually asked anyone about that. When you're waiting to see where you're going to wind up, if you're just fielding offers. So, just what are you thinking of at that time? I mean, are you a little nerve wracked? I don't know where I'm going to wind up. You have to move. You have to. What are you thinking about when you're sitting there going through free agency?
I think there's two parts to it for me. One, you're talking about the elite, the upper 1% of the upper 1%. Um, at that time with the 25-man roster, and 30 teams, there were 750 guys in the world that were on an active roster. So you're in rarefied air, but at the same, so you carry with you this confidence, and you can compete, and you've done it for long enough even to get to that point, because free agency is 6 years in, and you're like, you're fighting from day one just to stay, and then you're fighting to get to arbitration, and then you're fighting to get to free agency. So you have a backlog of games that you can look back on and go, I'm good at this. There are other people that are better, but I'm good at this specific thing. So you have confidence. At the same time, I think the human condition lends itself to insecurity. So just like if you were starting a business and you have a
Mm-hmm.
product that's for sale and is something that people want, you still have to put yourself out there, and there's doubt at some level. And in this particular sense, I was just coming off of 83 games with Atlanta. I had a really strong year. I felt great. And what I saw was the normal thing occur right after the World Series. 1 week passes. Okay, it opens up. And I watched, some pretty big signings. And then I watched two guys who did what I did, uh, sign pretty big deals. Um, Rafael Soriano, I believe, was one,
Mm-hmm.
or no, different person. Anyway, one guy went to the Yankees, for about $4 million a year, a 3 year deal. It was 3 for 12, and then Jeremy Affeldt went to the Giants 2 for 8. So right away, that kind of sets the bar. It's like, okay, these guys are better than me, and this is what it should look like. And then all of a sudden, really after like 3 or 4 signings, everything stopped, grinding to a halt, silence. So my phone doesn't ring. So I already have the built-in human condition I talked about, and then there's zero. And then the next offer I got was from a team, and it was a month and a half later, and it was a minor league deal for a third of what I made the year before.
Oh wow.
I was like, whoa, hey, quick timeout. Let's review that. What are we doing here? And this was also coming into the first year of the WBC. It was the first year it ever happened, was in 2009. So it was an elongated spring training, and it was the first time I think GMs and owners really used that soft deadline of pitchers and catchers report, um, as an ace in the hole against players. We're not really against them, but they used it as a bargaining chip. Like,
Yeah.
the player wants to get in and play. And, we all know what happened, to the housing market in 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were economists who were advising owners and GMs to slow their roll a little bit, and to be very wary of the economic situation before they started writing fat checks.
Sure.
And it reset value in a lot of different ways. And then there were some contentious bargaining agreements after that. This spanned the rest of my career. And just now, I believe that we're actually seeing things start to open back up. Yet at the same time, oddly, if you look in the players union where I was a rep for many years,
Sure.
if you looked at a graph of just profits versus player salaries, they go hand in hand. As profits go up, so do player salaries. And as profits go down, so do player salaries. They're inextricably linked.
That makes always makes me wonder. You were a player rep. I mean, like, what was your take on, say, some of these small market teams that are benefiting from revenue sharing but not passing it along to their players? How did that sit with you as a player rep in the room?
Well, it's strange now because I'm 10 years removed,
Yeah.
10, 11 years removed from active playing duty. I can understand the business sense of it far better now than when I was, big chested and, puffing out and going, well, this is bullcrap. And if I'm the team in the NL Central that has to have everything happen right to go even make a run at a wild card, why am I going? I'm a small market team to begin with. Why would I try to do that if I know that, hey, this is the gate I'm going to get, this is the revenue I'm getting from TV, this is the revenue I'm banking on from the other clubs? What's the incentive?
Hmm.
What's the incentive for me to do that? Nobody's forcing, nobody's holding a gun to their heads.
Do you believe in a salary cap for baseball or a floor or anything?
Absolutely not.
Good. No, I don't either.
If you look at the mess that are the three other major sports leagues
Oh yeah.
as far as contracts go, don't even open that can of worms. Well, the fact that it's even being toyed
Yeah.
with the luxury tax, I mean, that stifles a lot to begin with. I think the biggest thing that has actually led to teams having a chance, regardless of the market that they're in, the biggest thing is I'm grateful for analytics. I'm grateful that you can get down into the weeds and run a spreadsheet and search and have multiple options to look at a guy through, and then that lens creates, okay, here's the vision for what we're doing. But again, it all goes down to a business model. It's not just draft and develop. It's not acquire cheap. It's how do we value things instead of the brand that I talked about before, where the St. Louis Cardinals played a brand of baseball
Yes.
that was very technically sound, and they drafted and developed and they brought these guys through after a specific period of time, and then all of a sudden a dude you'd never heard about is hitting 25 home runs per year from a little known school in Illinois. And we've got this starting guy that they acquired on the cheap in a background trade 3 years before, and they brought him up through the system, and he throws 4 quality pitches, and now he's a frontline starter. That was the brand.
Yeah. Defense, speed. Um, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And it was an on-field product that everybody could see.
Yeah, and you knew what you were going to see.
Now, right, and this is and here's the detraction then in relatable TV contracts is if your team doesn't have a brand, which most of them don't anymore,
Mm-hmm.
what they're looking at is, the fan sits on the sidelines and goes, okay, there's no discernible way to tell what spreadsheet your organization that you follow, your club, is running. What do they value?
Yeah.
You can't see it with the eye test.
I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of confounding to me about a team like the Pirates. Like, I'm not sure what it is that they're trying to do. I don't know if they're sure what it is that they're trying to do. But I mean, so in that regard, I do agree. I mean, I think, I mean, even you look at a team like the Yankees over the years, they're just gonna outslug you. They're gonna just hit home runs. They're gonna, put guys on base, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that brand of baseball plays anymore.
Well, when you say the brand of baseball doesn't play anymore, I look at that from a macro perspective. Like, okay, where's the systemic problem? And the systemic problem is what's being valued. If wins aren't valued for starting pitchers, Okay, where is the win actually valued? What's the monetary gain per win at the major league level? And what's the monetary cost of a win at the major league level? And so you can look at payroll and you can go, did a team on their collective payroll pay X amount of dollars per win?
Hmm.
You have $100 million payroll, you won 100 games, you paid $1 million per win.
Not a bad deal.
No, not a, I mean that would be bargain basement pricing today.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't remember. I'm not sure who the last team was that had $100 million payroll and won 100 games, but
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, that would be interesting to look up to see.
I would say the last I saw was roughly it cost somebody somewhere took the time to roll out some numbers, and it was like 2.75 million per win.
Okay,
that was the average cost of a win. You took the collective salaries of all Major League Baseball divided by the number of wins.
Interesting.
And that's what it technically cost.
Today's terms.
So yeah,
that's actually not too bad.
Dodgers are. I mean, in 10 years, the Dodgers wins are going to cost a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say so. But luckily for now, they have. I still find it hysterical that they're only spending $7 million this year on Yamamoto and Ohtani. That's a steal of the century, right there.
It's unbelievable. Like, and everybody's up in arms that they put their players on layaway.
I never thought about it like that. It's true.
That's all they did.
It's true. I mean, and you know what though? It's legal in
the
CBA.
They went to rent a center and bought a sofa.
The old Kmart days.
It's a really, really nice sofa.
It's the nicest sofa you can get for $7 million. I'll tell you. But listen, we're coming up on a half hour here, so I want to do one last thing, and I didn't tell you about it beforehand because I just want to spontaneous.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, in each city, what was your favorite food item to go and eat pre or post game? I guess it would be post game because pre game you got to. Okay, ready? Here we go. North side of Chicago.
A place called Chicago Bagel Authority is phenomenal.
All right, Chicago Bagel. Because I'm just looking for recommendations too for when I travel. Atlanta.
Of course you are. Atlanta. Any type of breakfast food. Preferably with biscuits and gravy.
Now, this is after a game, or just at any
no?
point?
You said pre or post. Pre or post. So
I'm asking.
So let's take the gravy principle, and we'll just go breakfast food, biscuits and gravy, chicken and dumplings.
Oh, that's good stuff. Okay, now L.A.
Couple of sushi spots in Pasadena. But I was also a sucker for Pinkberry.
Oh, it's so good.
Baltimore, crab cakes and football.
Oh, perfect. Don't tell Wayne. Florida Marlins.
Absolutely not. Florida Marlins. Well, I would say not Marlin. Not a big fan. But there's a lot of really good sushi places there. But a Florida chain for a quick meal that I liked, pre or post game, Pollo Tropical.
Oh, it's so good. When I lived down there, I would eat that all the time.
It's amazing.
It's fantastic.
It's amazing.
And you're in and you're out, and you get like half a chicken, and it's fantastic.
It's Chipotle, but really good.
Yeah, without the E. coli. Okay, now south side of Chicago.
I didn't have a specific spot that I went to, but as soon as you cross the river, I was always going for the Italian beef sandwiches.
Oh my God, those things are so good. That's one of my favorite things.
And none of the things I have mentioned to you are overly healthy.
No. But
except for LA and Florida.
Well, sushi. The sushi is pretty.
Fish or sushi and then the Pollo Tropical. But I mean, you can fix that by putting enough sour cream on anything.
You got a great point there. All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of the first episode of Totally Baseless here on BallNine. I want to thank Will Ohman for joining me. Will, thank you so much, man. It was a good time.
You're welcome. Anytime. Happy to do it.
All right. So I'm Chris Vitale. Once again, thank you for tuning in to episode number 1 of Totally Baseless. We'll be coming to you twice a week throughout the season. you never know what you're going to get. So once again, thanks, Will, and we'll do this again.
Thank you, you filthy animal.
You filthy animals. We'll catch you next time.